Good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to be back, tHUB, and nice to see all of you engaged in setting up wonderful businesses. So don't just get carried away by Kamalesh, For the first time, somebody called me a superstar. I would have been happy if somebody would have done that 25, 30 years ago. So what I plan to do is to give a little bit of exposure to some of the important aspects of IP and also look into what are some of the paths which the startups can think about without going really, making deep dives into it. But, we can always discuss. So just to put everybody in the same page, there are different definition of startups. There's a definition of startup which is also required for IP purposes to get benefits, to fall into a lower slab of fees, to get other recognitions, to get grants. And they are not very different. So your company, it should be a registered company, any form, LLP or a partnership. Age of the company should not be more than 10 years. And the annual turnover should not have crossed 100 crores. INR. And we are focusing on a work which is based on innovation. It's not a me too. See, all entrepreneurs are not startups, but every startup is also an entrepreneur. Now, you cannot form this company by splitting or rearrangement. What you need to do is that you need to have the certificate to get any and all benefits of IP. This is self-registerable, which gives you all the benefits. So you can go to the Ministry of Commerce site, fill in your details, and get this certificate to start with. So now here we are all startup. What are we looking at? When we look at intellectual property, see, it all starts from an idea. So there is a creation, there is an application, then you do some protection, some you don't protect based on your business need. Then there is a successful business. Now, I know there are hard times when people need to take strong decisions whether we go ahead and protect this IP or not. We'll see some of them. So it's a bundle of rights. As per the TRIPS classification, IP is basically copyright, trademark, patents, the most three popular ones. And the other forms of IP are GI, industrial design, integrated circuits, trade secret, and plant varieties. They may not be very relevant to your kind of work. Contract is not a form of IP, but I have added it here because that is the most important part of your functioning, which will control the life and the path of all your IP. So one sentence for each of them. What is copyright? Don't think it is the right to copy. Although the word sounds like that, it is just the reverse, just the opposite. So it is a way to protect creative expressions, not ideas. Your idea needs to be translated to an expression which is fixed into a tangible medium. They could be literature, music, cinema, drama, and sound recording. Fortunately, software codes are classified as literature in this and are all copyrightable. Trademarks are the various signs which we associate products and services. Patents are for technology, these are for inventions. Geographical indication is actually connecting you to an area. Now, like you say, Hyderabad biryani, or Pochampalli saris. There are so many in Telangana now, already registered. Designs is what appeals to your eyes. Why you like a certain pen and you don't like a certain structure of a water bottle, or you don't like a certain car, is on the design and the aesthetic appeal part. Now, integrated circuits and semiconductors basically deals with chips. That's an area which is specified, and we have different legislation for that. Trade secret covers confidential information which could harm your business if they are in public domain. And lastly, plant varieties for asexually produced seeds. Contracts are legally binding acts to take you there. Now we'll spend a little bit of time in the first three so that all of us tend to be in the same page. As I said, copyright is not the right to copy, then what is it? It is granted to the creator the moment it is created. Okay. And for what is the right? That nobody can use your creation without your approval or authorization. And how long do you have that? It is 60 years for literary work, dramatic work, music, photography, artistic work. This is 60 years plus life. That means the creator, once he passes away, plus 60 years. That's a huge term. And for if you say for a critical material, that's a huge term. And 60 years just for cinematography, sound, posthumous work, government work, and stuff like that. Now, let's see what all can be copyrighted. You have literary works, which include books, articles, letters, pamphlets, computer programs, tables, anything which has been created. You have dramatic works, may not be very relevant in your professional life. It could be acting, recitation, cinematography, so on and so forth. Musical work, cinematography, artistic work, which includes your charts, maps. Okay. Now, in the previous presentation, we saw Kamalesh showing some graphs, some bar charts, which are sourced from a document, from a PDF document. Now, from now onwards, when you do that, check whether you can use them. And it's not that I'm not scaring you, many of them you can use for such programs, but build into the habit. When we make pamphlets, when we make flyers, can I just take a very colorful chart from the web? So, but there are certain leeway, which is a fair use. Certain things can be used. What is that certain thing? Depending on the character of the work, depending on the nature of the work, how much has been lifted, the right word is lifting, how much have this been lifted? These are considered as fair use. Mainly if you are critiquing somebody, writing a review, or for academic purposes, there is a huge availability. Now, whenever I show this kind of slides, or in other intense workshop on copyright, the question which I get, so how much can I lift? 1 page, 2 page, 100 words? Now, there is a legal provision for that as well. See, for motion pictures, if you are taking a video, 10% of the original video, 3 minutes, which is less. If you are copying text, it is again 10% of 100 words, which is less. Music is 10% or 30 seconds. Photos and images, which are 5 works, so on and so forth. Now, if you are taking stuff from others' copyrighted material, this is the range which you can keep in mind. And at the same time, don't forget to reference it. Okay? The source. Now, who has the liability? The end user. Okay? There is, although we use a term, more so in the US, as innocent infringer, but there is, in reality, the burden of proof lies with the accused infringer. Okay? You have to prove you have not infringed. I don't have to prove that you have infringed if there is a litigation going on. It's a very funny situation. It's like I'm calling you a thief and you have to prove that you have not done robbery. That's how TRIPS has defined, and that's how all signatories of TRIPS handle infringement cases. So now let's look at the trademark. Trademark has more for three kinds of benefits: functional, emotional, and it's a expectation set. When you look at a trademark and buy a certain perfume or a certain cosmetic, there is an expectation that how this is going to look like. So trademarks are also become brands. I have given you three very, very simple examples here. There are many more which are at higher ranges or higher values. So when Philip Morris is a tobacco company in the US, they bought a cheese variety. They paid around $3 billion just for the brand or the logo, okay? Which is much more than their tangible assets value, or much more than their book value, if you call it in finance terms. Similarly, when Nestle bought Kit Kat, they paid around $2.5 billion. Again, that $2.5 billion was much above their book value. So trademark brands have immense value. There are ways, there are models which have been used to reach a certain dollar figure to those brands. Now, when you look at the Indian scenario, when Alliance from Germany collaborated with Bajaj for the Bajaj Alliance Insurance Company, they paid around 70 crores just to use the word Bajaj. So there are different types of trademarks. We will see them. The life of a trademark is usually said 10 years, but it can be renewed indefinitely. You can keep on renewing it for 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. So it's a lifelong thing. So let's look at what can be trademarked. You can trademark devices. You can trademark headings. You can trademark labels, tickets, name, signatures, words or initials, numbers, shapes, packaging, color combination, and various services. Like your tHUB symbol is trademarked, I guess. Now, with that comes a situation of counterfeit and fake. Now, the concept also comes from the background that if you are not comfortable with a certain language, you can still select the appropriate product because you can associate it with the brand and the trademark. Now, with that leads to a lot of fakes. I have shown you some of the counterfeits which are popular. My favorite happens to be the Upma, which is a shoe-selling brand in Chennai. Now let's look at patent. Patent is when you have a technology, a process, an innovation, which is an invention. Now to patent something, what you call, first it has to be not included in the exclusion list of invention, then it has to be novel, then it has to be inventive, that means it is not obvious, and third, it should have an industrial application or utility. So these are the requirements, so it can fall for anything new and useful, process, machine, manufacture, or any of those put together. The right you get is for 20 years. In India, there are no schemes to extend this life beyond 20 years. In some of the other countries, this life can be extended for more than 20. If there is too much delay in granting, the USPTO gives you a patent term adjustment. And for pharmaceutical products which require regulatory approval, you get a patent term extension, which is known as the Hatch-Waxman extension. That could even be more than 5 years beyond the term. And you should keep in mind, having a patent is not enough. Because patent is not an offensive right. It is a defensive exclusive right. You may have a bag full of patents, a portfolio of patents, But at the same time, there may be a bunch of patents sitting around which are unexpired, which can stop you from exercising the right of your patent. So patent actually doesn't give you any right, any monopoly to do something. It only excludes others. But there are ways and means how these are tackled. So what is infringement? In simple word, make, use, sell, offer to sell, import. Make, use, sell, offer to sell, or import any product or services or processes which are covered by a patent document, a granted patent. So if you do that, it's going to be infringing. There are some exclusions which are allowed. In case of national emergencies, government can suspend patents, like we saw a bit of it during COVID. And there could be, government can use it if they feel there is a need, or sometimes, in international territories or like the oceans and the sky, there's nothing like infringement. Or the Bolar exemption. Bolar exemption is the one which is being used largely by all the pharmaceutical companies. It actually originates from a litigation in Canada, Hoffman La Roche plus Bolar Pharmaceutical. So in that, what does that give you? Right? It gives you a right that you can infringe a patent to generate regulatory data required to approve for the approval to market your drug. So this applies for generic drugs only. So you can start doing trials, research, including clinical trials, if you want to be a generic entrant in the market, even when the patent is existing. So what are the legal remedies for all this? We have both administrative remedies, that means you can stop the importation. There can be civil remedies like injunctions. There can be criminal remedies for trademark and copyright only. Patent, however, the maximum remedies have been winding up and penalties. Now this chart, I'm showing you patents, but you can add any other form of IP also. When you look at IP, you have to classify them in three categories. Your portfolio into three. One which is defensive, that ones which you need for your survival, for doing business. Okay. That's a defensive patent. The other is monetizing, the ones which have licensable value or can be linked to your revenue. And the third is the strategic. Those are not used by yourself today, but you see technology going forward is going to a certain area where those patents will become valuable, so you can put them in the strategic bucket. Now these are all dynamic, but they move from one bucket to the other. And lastly, you should also have a small bucket, hopefully. Those are the litigation patents, where you think they have high potential of litigation. Now I'm showing you for patents, you can replace that with any other forms of IP. Now when you have data or research output, how should you handle that data? Do you want to patent anything and everything? So when you have data, you can publish in a journal, you can have a patent, or you can keep it as a trade secret also. It depends on the value of that data and whether it is protectable. If you keep it as a trade secret, it stays with you forever. But then you should have reasonable steps to maintain a trade secret. Or if you patent it, you are protected for 20 years. If you publish it or put it in public domain, you have no right, no proprietary right on the data. So depending on your business model and the need, some will fall in some of the buckets, there is no fixed route. So what could be the important practices? You should have policy procedures and records. You should believe in compliance to those policies. Define the scope and quality, management of the supply chain, security and confidentiality, training and capacity, monitoring and measurements to measure success. Now let's see how you can do each of them. See, if you look at the cycle, it all starts with research, then come out with an IP. There could be co-creation, there could be collaboration. You may choose to use your own IP or you may choose to license it out. What are the regulations in India? Primary regulation, you have the Contract Act, the Foreign Exchange Management Act, FEMA, the IP Acts. I mentioned those three which are of primary importance. Then you have the National IP Rights, IPR Policy, and you have Competition Act. Now what's important also is this is what we spoke about, is to see what are the forms of IP which could influence our business. Now let's look how to manage that. If you want to manage that, there are a few blanket things which I would mention. Size doesn't matter. Quality does. That means you do not need to have a big portfolio of patents. You may have one or two which are critical to your business and can stop your competitors from in the market. See, for any product, the revenue pie is fixed on a particular time. If you can keep your competitors out, you tend to get a larger size of the pie. That's how this model works. Of course, yes, if you are negotiating, if you have a large number of patents, you can negotiate better. But having said that, if those patents are not that critical and not that important, it may not be very useful. Seek multi-layer protection. A single layer is not always adequate. You can have multiple patents, you can have patents, design, patents, trademark, copyright, whichever way, mix and match, as per your business need. Find out, do you really own that IP? This is also ignored. What I mean by that is, there are a bunch of people who are working on a project, developing, coming out with results. So these researchers, have they transferred that IP to the organization? Or do you have the proper employee-employer agreement that all IP generated in your startup belongs to the organization? Important to follow. So you need to have those necessary agreements. You should need to have those agreements with third parties. You need to have such agreements with your suppliers, your vendors, so that you have a comfortable situation. Know your market, both present and future. Okay. This is not only from the point of view of knowing the market from revenue terms or sales projection terms, from the IP terms. See the pending patents, how many of them are going to come and which of them are going to be hurdles to you. Now this is sometimes, not given that much of importance, because in a startup where there is a lot of competing priorities, sometimes IP management, IP handling takes a back seat. Do you have freedom of practice or freedom to operate? This is what I was saying. Have you done an analytic search on your offering to see that there are no unexpired patents in the geo where you want to commercialize it? This is a very, very important exercise. Like, MSI was talking about open source. That's another important thing. Open source is actually not open. There are 5 different types of licenses which is required. Okay. We love to go to GitHub, pick up a code segment, use it, make derivatives, make modification. There are a lot of obligations associated with it. Okay. Please keep those in mind. So you should have a freedom to operate. Green signal. Do not procrastinate. You will miss opportunities. When you want to file, have a plan. You will miss the opportunity when that IP will need not be anymore useful or may not be protectable or registerable any longer. So, there are situations I have seen with not a huge number, but multiple startups where they have lost the opportunity to protect their IP anymore. So how is the IP map going to look for you, the roadmap? You start with a defensive situation where that, I'm not going to infringe anybody's IP, let me build my IP. Then you move to a more offensive situation, then where you say, okay, fine, I'm going to have IP which is going to help in my revenue building. Okay. Then you become more strategic where you start looking at licensable IP or monetizable IP in not only commercialization but in different other forms. Finally, you need where you can be benchmarked for your IP management. I usually suggest that startups should read this book. This is a book called Edison in the Boardroom. Okay. And it's a research, how researchers, their development and business and IP handling is very, very nicely explained. So I took this image and this write-up from this book only. They also talk in the similar line where you have a defensive level, the initial is a cost control level, then a profit center level. See, unfortunately, most startups look at IP as a cost and not as an investment. That transition happens when you move from a cost control to a profit center level, and finally it's an integrated level where IP is part of your every operation, every unit in the organization, and finally you go towards a visionary position. So in this management, as I say, the game is very simple. The game is very simple in the way it's a game of value and risk. And you understand it very clearly, maximize your IP value and minimize your IP risk. And let's see how you can do each of them. To maximize your IP value, you need to have policies that protects your own IP and respects others' IP. You should have compliances, system building, which is overseen by the senior management. You should have confidentiality, systems in place which restricts access, proper employee-employer agreements. This is not only limited to confidentiality, not limited only to your work and related. This could also take to the next one, which is security, both physical and digital. There are, today you have an excellent DRM system, DRM management system available where you can access control almost every document. How to look at the risk management? Assess the risk, admit there is a risk, okay, and try to mitigate the risk. There should be enough training where at appropriate level, at different types, where the employees are actually aware that this may not be a good thing to do, or this may be not legal to do, or this could lead to infringement. So you should have a proper training system, you should have a proper monitoring system, and incorporate the findings. We should also have an improvement system to track, which we say, in the corporate world as CAPA, corrective action and preventive action, so that it stays like that. Now, for anything to run smoothly, you need a governance structure. So you should have a governance structure which evaluates your own risk, also studies the position of your competitors, look at invention disclosure forms, how inventions or IP is getting generated, and it is left to you, based on your business need, how you are going to run this monthly, quarterly, annually, based on your business demands. Now, I'm now bringing in one more concept here. Earlier, we were talking about value, risk. I'm now bringing in one more circle in the Venn diagram, which is commercialization. And for each of them, whenever we study or try to do that, three questions to answer. What, when, how? Now, what, when, how for each of them. So we have already spoken about the protection. You know how to. Why? Because there's a business need, sustainability, continuity, and profit margin. When various registration and filing procedures. Similarly, your risk is mitigated by various process and policies. How now brings in the other part is bring in the commercial angle. All three has to meet. Remember, end of the day, the enterprise, there's a challenge, there's a cake, there's the science, there's technology, but if you don't make revenue, you won't be able to sustain for a long time. So when I put in the commercialization part, you will find that you need to maximize that. You don't get the maximum in day one. How do you do that? You do that by various models of commercialization, various licensing model, various discussions, various contracts, various advisories, and take it. Now, let's put a little more things there, all in the perspective, so that you have a bigger cycle now. So it starts with training, it starts with protection, it starts with enforcement. That means you are looking who is potentially or possibly infringing your IP, the enforcement part. Then you have processes in place, policies in place, you have a proper commercialization plan, and you have a risk management system for IP. See, every organization, big companies usually, maintains a register of 10 big risks they have. And tech-savvy companies, the IP risk usually figures in the top one or two. And there are other litigation risks also, which is usually done. So what do investors look at? You want to pull out money from the market? What Amisha said was absolutely right, which we were discussing also a little before. That is only at a B series investment when the startups move around. No. I need to register IP, because at the first question, your VC or your angel is going to ask. So what do they look at? They look at high market growth with strong margin potential. Any first thing is market growth high, margin potential is also high. Offering a technology that is strong in marketplace and the strength of the offering. Strong management and resource strength, and GTM, go-to-market strategies, plans, differentiation, competitiveness, and risk management. Now, all this can be strengthened only with IP. If you do not have a proper IP strategy in place, you will not be able to establish any of those. Okay. Of course, investors also look into another point which is also important, that how much the founder has, the potential of founder to lose. Okay, so don't invest money if you cannot lose that money. That's another point most of the angel investors keep in mind. So what are the challenges? Limited budget, limited time, limited knowledge, increasing pressure, difficulty in protection early, and the product is not completely developed. So you want to see the success of that product before you really want to register some of the IPs which has been already existing. So this is important. Why is this IP important in this position? You are protecting your future business. You need to monitor competition, ensure compliance, leverage your complete portfolio, and look at third-party arrangements. Now, this is how a startup usually, in my words, usually will grow. See, from the small sapling, it becomes a big tree. And how at this different stages you look at IP. At the first stage, when you are the initial stages of you need to have IP protection, patents and trademarks, continuously do infringement checks, do competitive analysis, you should have a proper internal commercial plan, carry out IP audit, secure your IP, and manage your IP strategically. The ones which cannot be avoided, the ones which is a must, is the one which I have done in bold. As you move to a more mature stage, where the sapling is now a plant, and then you need a plan for proper IP protection, keep some money or keep some investment fixed for handling your IP. Development team should be completely conversant of the do's and don'ts. You get into a proper position with your commercial structure, focus on IP compliance, and as that plant now becomes or is becoming a tree, you now look for enforcement, have commercial models, manage IP, the portfolio in a much more professional manner, and move around. So what is the key highlight? The key highlight is investor watch your IP strategies and approaches, especially in certain technology areas. Services, manufacturing, they have a different approach. Your IP investment should be low in the initial phases, but should be increased proportionately as we move forward. Trust your IP partner during your incubation, select your partners selectively, have a strategic management role. Do not keep your IP management static. It's a dynamic process. There are enough more mentors available. As I was telling Satish, that in the IP startup now, the number of mentors have far outnumbered the number of startups. So that's, you select whose hand you are going to hold. So this is the life cycle. It starts from the idea, research, creation, assessment, exploitation, could be assignment, licensing, or your own production. Okay. When you are in that market, you need to enforce by monitoring, and sometime it will, some of the IP is going to expire if it comes to public domain. Common challenges: limited budget, lack of expertise, infringement risk, local expansion complexities, so on and so forth. So, patents for offerings, trademark for logos, copyrights for design, expressions, content, trade secret for proprietary formula. I've just showed you how many different types of ways you can file a patent. You can have similar figures for others as well. And lastly, what kind of assistance? We were talking about this. This is what is existing for startups. That's why you need that first certificate I showed you. Not only to get into a startup fee mode, which gives you 65 to 70% discount in the fees which you pay to the government. So you have the Ministry of MSME, you can go and register there using your Udyog Aadhaar, and it gives you a reimbursement of for international patents up to 10 lakh when it is granted, 5 lakhs at the time of filing, for domestic patents 1 lakh and 2 lakh respectively, trademark, industrial design, GI you can see. So if you are filing a patent and you are in the startup sector, these are available. And I have seen many startups getting this in a couple of weeks. So you can also choose to utilize them. I think I should stop now. I love if there any questions? Or maybe now or later? Thank you very much.